I've never really been a fan of marriage. I still do believe it's a very problematic institution. I'm really just looking to start a conversation about what marriage currently is and what marriage could be. Hello, everyone. Today I want to talk about building a happy marriage. I realized recently that my partner and I are in a happy marriage. It took me a very long time to accept this truth because I've never really been a fan of marriage, and so that was not really something I aspired to. Growing up, my mom was very honest about the restrictions that a lot of women face within a marriage. And as I started to observe the marriages around me, I noticed that a lot of them weren't very healthy. So, marriage didn't really seem like a situation that I wanted to be a part of. I'm also a very independent person, and so being with somebody for the rest of my life didn't really feel that appealing to me. And I will also say I have always developed really meaningful friendships in my life that felt committed. And so it didn't feel like anything was missing. Like there was never a time in my life where I'm like,
I really feel like if I was in a romantic relationship, my life would be more fulfilled.
and then I met my partner and everything changed for me. It's not to say that I changed any of my views when it came to marriage. I still do believe it's a very problematic institution. But within a month of being with my partner, I knew that I wanted to spend my life with him. One of my friends, Jess, who is also married, used to tell me that when she met her partner, the reason that she could envision a life with him was because he felt safe. And I think that that really is why I also wanted to build a life with my partner. Our relationship was not like a whirlwind romance. We started off as friends, well, friends that were attracted to each other, so maybe not friends. And I was not looking for a relationship, least of all a relationship with a man. I just wanted to spend time together and have fun. And he definitely wanted to be in a relationship with me, but he just allowed things to unfold naturally. And then one day I woke up and realized that he met all the needs that I wanted from a romantic relationship. So there was no reason to not be in one. I actually am one of those people that has a list of everything they want in a romantic partner. And I didn't think about the list until like 2 months into dating. And when I remembered the list, I went through it and realized he checked all my boxes. And so that day, I asked him if he wanted to be in a relationship. And he was like,
Yes, absolutely. This is the moment I've been waiting for.
and that's how we got into a relationship. It was very organic and very intuitive. So much of why we were together is because of the way we made each other feel. And suddenly, marriage was on my mind. I remember calling my mom up and telling her that I was thinking about marrying this person and I wanted to know how she felt. Because honestly, if my mom was not a fan of who I was with, I probably would break up with them. I just value her opinion so much, and I know that she would never take advantage of that. She was always so thoughtful about sharing her opinion with me. My mom didn't know what to say when I told her. She was like,
Kirsten, are you okay? You have literally spent the last 25 years telling me that you would never ever get married.
and I was like, I know, weird, huh? And she's like, yeah, weird. And I often think about why I chose marriage specifically. I could stay in a lifetime relationship with my partner, and that would be fine. But it was about being able to imagine a marriage that was not legally bound, a marriage that was not restrictive, a marriage that, in fact, was loving and nurturing. And I was intrigued, what is that like? Like, is it even possible? And I just wanted to build that possibility with my partner for us, but also for the people around me. I wanted people to witness that marriage can really be whatever you want it to be. We actually have the power to redefine marriage. The other reason that it took me a long time to accept that I was in a happy marriage is because I used to believe that happy equals easy. So if a situation is hard to be in, then it couldn't possibly be a happy situation. But I've come to learn that hard situations are hard because they mean so much, because they have the power to bring us happiness. And marriage isn't always hard, and that when marriage is easy, it makes other hard things just seem so much lighter. So now I measure happiness differently. I think more about whether my marriage is fulfilling me. And if it is, then I feel like it's making me happy. I wanted to make this video and share my experience just in case there is somebody out there who is thinking about marriage and what it could be, but also because I don't want us as a society to accept that marriage is inevitably unhappy. I hear people talk about marriage as though it requires a lot of sacrifice and a lot of compromise, and that you're bound to not like each other for years. And I don't believe that marriage needs to be that way. I've only been married for a year and a half, so maybe I'm being naive. But I also know myself, and I know that I wouldn't allow myself to be in a marriage that was full of sacrifice and compromise, and one that involved me not liking my partner. And if my relationship with my partner ever ended up like that, I would not want to be married to him anymore. I think sometimes we're told that we just need to accept things the way they are because people don't want to put in the work to dream of what things could be. But I'm a dreamer, and the way things are is not acceptable for me. I would rather build new situations that are acceptable for me. I remember in the third year of my undergrad degree in sociology, I was in this family class, and my professor said, we are at a time in the world where marriage is the most negotiable. Like, up until now, people got married because of money, or people got married because of status, or people got married so that they had access to basic rights. And sometimes that is still the case. But we also have choices about who we want to marry and why we want to marry and whether we want to marry in the first place. and we have choices about what those marriages look like. Before I get further into it, I just want to preface with the reality that I am no expert. What I'm sharing today is just my experience from my own marriage. Some of it might work for you, some of it might not. I'm really just looking to start a conversation about what marriage currently is and what marriage could be. I also asked a bunch of you if y'all had any questions about marriage, and so I'm going to be incorporating a lot of your questions into the conversation today. I really hope I answer them. If I don't, feel free to ask me further questions in the comments below. So what is it that makes my marriage work? Number one, my partner and I are always on the same page when it comes to our political values. Now, I know this isn't a priority for everybody. Some people are able to be in relationships with others that don't share their political values or share most of their political values, but not all of them. For me, that doesn't work. There are times when I share something or my partner shares something and the other person doesn't agree immediately, but after some reflection and conversation, we're always able to get the other person on board. And it's not because we always want to agree with each other, but it's because we're not afraid to push the other person beyond their comfort zone to how they actually feel about a situation. We're also so open to learning about how we can better align with our political values. You know, sometimes we might feel some type of way, but that might just be because of trauma and not because that's actually how we feel about a situation. I really do believe that sharing political values contributes to our happy marriage because when we step out into the world, we're constantly faced with other people and situations that don't allow for us to embrace our political values. And it's exhausting. And the moment we step into our home, we sigh with relief because we know that we can unapologetically talk about our political values at home and have really fruitful conversations about politics where we both feel safe. Number two, we both make space for the other person to be themselves. Even if it's not something we understand, my partner is a really cuddly person and I am not. I think the only person that I would initiate a cuddle with is probably my mom. That is not a way that I show love or receive love. And being in a relationship with my partner has taught me that that is definitely the way he shows love and receives love. And there are times when I'm like, Elijah, you're allowed a 3-second hug and like that's it. But for the most part, this is a part of him that I've embraced. And I will say it has allowed me to understand the ways that touch can also mean love. And now I don't just cuddle him, but sometimes I ask to be cuddled. I know, mind blowing. Number 3, we have learned how to fight. So if somebody asks me, how often do you and Elijah fight? I would say we fight all the time, 3 to 5 times a week. And after talking to my therapist, I've learned that what we're doing is not always fighting, it's actually a lot of conflict resolution. We don't feel the need to yell because we know that when we're trying to communicate to each other, the other person is going to listen to us. We listen first and then respond. we are also able to recognize that sometimes we actually need space before we can have a conversation about conflict. And this one's huge for me. No matter what we're fighting about, it never takes away from the respect that we have for each other as human beings. If my partner and I are in the middle of a fight and I say, I can't talk about this anymore, my partner will never be like, no, talk about it. We need to figure this out. Instead, he'll be like, okay, let me know when you can. Even after we've completely resolved the fight, and I say, I need some time away from you for a day or 3 days or a week just to process this fight, my partner will always be like, okay, sounds good. I'm never made to feel like my ask is unreasonable. And it always makes me feel like we're not fighting each other, we're actually fighting for this relationship. My friend Ida, who is also married, gave me some really good advice when it comes to working through conflict. She said, when you marry somebody, you intend to spend the rest of your life with them. And that also means that you have a lifetime to work on things. You don't need to feel pressure to figure things out overnight, to solve every problem that could come up in your relationship like that. In marriage, you actually have an opportunity to dig deeper and work slowly through your conflict. It allows us to pause and think about what the root of the fight is. And that can often prevent couples from having the same fights over and over again. Number 4, honestly, going through trauma together, which I know is not something that sounds like a fun part of marriage, but going through trauma together, whether it's something huge like my mom dying or something smaller like us experiencing everyday racism when we're out in the world. When we experience trauma together, whether it's one of us experiencing it more or shared trauma, we learn how to hold each other through that. We get to learn more about our past and our present and how that can inform our future. Even though Elijah and I have only been married for a 1.5 years, in the first year of our marriage, there wasn't a single month where we didn't experience life-altering trauma. And it was a lot. In the moment, I questioned multiple times, and so did he, whether we could stay in our relationship together, because dealing with trauma and then on top of that having to continuously work on a marriage, especially your first year of marriage, it felt impossible. And I used to think that Elijah and me constantly reevaluating our relationship and wondering whether being together was the right call for us was a failure when it came to our marriage. I thought that we were bad at marriage because we were constantly wondering whether we should break up. But after talking to my therapist, she was like, hot take, what if that actually is a healthy part of your marriage? And I was like, come again. She explained to me that every time Elijah and I wonder, is this relationship really what's best for us? And then arrive at a response where we realize, yes, this relationship is still what's best for us. We are recommitting to each other. There aren't a lot of people that would constantly reflect on whether their marriage was compatible with their own personal growth. Going through all that trauma together and still finding a way to stay together has taught me about the resilience of Elijah's and my marriage. A few weeks ago, Elijah and I decided to get legally married, and while listening to the vows that the officiant was reading out, in sickness and health, for richer, for poorer, blah, 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 I couldn't help but smile because I realized that Elijah and I have actually been faced with every single one of those conditions. And we still made it through. And I don't think a lot of people can say that, even after decades of marriage. Number 5, our worlds do not revolve around each other. My partner and I do not feel whole because of each other. We really are whole as individual people, and when we come together, we just form this beautiful combination of two very whole people. We have friends, we have hobbies, we have life dreams that are not about each other. There are even days where we don't spend a large chunk of time together, even though we live together. Sometimes we don't want to eat dinner together. Sometimes we don't want to go into bed at the same time. And we don't hold that against each other. We don't see the other person's preference to spend time alone or spend time with someone else as a reflection of how much that person loves us. Number 6, we develop boundaries around our families based on what is best for our partnership. So I've noticed in some relationships, one person's family members will not treat the person's partner well. And it's just kind of like, they're my family. They're like that. We have to understand. And I didn't want that for our relationship, and neither does my partner. We both want our families to respect our partners. We don't give our families the opportunity to come in between us and cause any drama. Instead, we take responsibility for our own families. So if my family does something that's unfair to Elijah or says something that's unfair to Elijah, I take it up with them. And he does the same for me. We don't expect each other to have to deal with that. We don't believe that we need to be understanding about being mistreated. Just like my partner and I don't mistreat each other and then expect the other person to be understanding, we hold the same standards for our family members. Number 7, we don't take each other for granted. Even when we do things for each other that are expected. So I am the cook in our family. I make sure every single meal that we have is taken care of. And Elijah still showers me with appreciation every time that I make us a meal. There will be times when he literally will say thank you 4 times for one meal. Like while I'm prepping the meal, while I'm cooking the meal, when the meal is finished, and then an hour after he's eaten because he still has gratitude for the meal. And I'm like, okay, Elijah, we get it. Like, you're happy that I cooked. But that also makes me feel appreciated and makes cooking for him so much more enjoyable. Similarly, because I have chronic pain, I often ask Elijah to do things for me, like getting me something from the other room so that I don't have to get up, or carrying something that's heavier so that it doesn't take a toll on my body. And even though it's been decided that this is something that Elijah is going to take on in our relationship, I don't take for granted that there has never been a time in the 2.5 years that we have been in a relationship where I have asked Elijah for something and he has said no. It doesn't matter how exhausted he is. It doesn't matter if he's having a bad day. It doesn't even matter that 2 seconds ago we were knee deep in a fight. Elijah will always do whatever I ask him to do. And that is something I'm really grateful for. So every time he does something for me, I never forget to say thank you. And thank you like I really mean it. Number 8, we are committed to learning more about each other. Even after being together for 2.5 years, there's still so much that we don't know about each other, and there's so much left to learn. Even if we have learned everything we need to know about each other up until now, we're growing every day and we're changing as people. And Elijah and I always honor that when we're in the car or when we're taking a walk outside. We always ask each other questions to learn more about how we feel about certain situations, or to learn more about what's on our mind, what's in our hearts. And sometimes we even revisit questions we've asked each other in the past to find out if our responses have changed. The way Elijah and I existed when we first started dating is still the way we exist today. We're always excited to get to know each other better. And finally, number 9, both my partner and I are committed to bridging the power dynamic in our relationship. So Elijah is a Black man. I am a racialized, queer, disabled woman. And these identities inform how much power we have in the world, but also within our relationship. No matter how much I try to understand, I don't know what it's like to live as a Black man. And there are going to be a lot of things that I miss. And when I do miss things, I don't expect Elijah to educate me on what I'm missing and how I can bridge that gap. When I got into a relationship with Elijah, I got into a relationship with all of him. That includes him as a Black man. And so it's my responsibility to put in the work to learn how I can love a Black man. Similarly, Elijah does not expect me to teach him how to be in a relationship with me. Often I hear people say, ask for what you want. If you're in a relationship, you cannot expect the other person to know what you want. I disagree. I don't believe that verbally communicating what we want is the only way for our partner to deduce what we want. There is body language, there is tone, there is facial expression. And I know this because that is how I am able to deduce what somebody else wants. And I think a lot of people who aren't men are able to do the same. In our relationship specifically, Elijah rarely has to tell me what he wants. I just pay attention to him and I'm able to deduce. Similarly, I expect him to figure out what I want. For example, the other day, Elijah had just come home from work and he came to me and let me know all the things that he was planning on doing in the house that day to make sure that I knew that he was on top of his chores. Now, the previous day, I had told Elijah that I really wanted to do mosques the next day together. Elijah definitely forgot about this, and so the next day, after talking about all the chores he's going to do, he let me know he's going to watch the basketball game and go to bed. Out of the kindness of my heart, I prompted him and was like, are we still going to do the mosques together? And he said, I don't think I'm really going to have time for that. So I said, okay, this is where people are going to be like, you should tell him that you're upset and why you're upset so that he understands. No, I don't need to do that work. He should be able to figure it out himself. And he did. He notices the change in my tone when I say, okay. He ignores it and continues the conversation. To which I say, I don't really want to have a conversation with you right now. He pauses, wonders what's happening, realizes he needs to reflect a little bit, and says, okay. He leaves. He comes back 5 minutes later and apologizes and then says, I want to do the mass with you. Again, at this time, people might say, he figured it out. Now you can do the mass together. No, that's not good enough for me. So I tell him, I don't want to do the mass with you anymore because now it just feels like you're doing the mass because I want it and not because you wanted to do that together. And then he responds, that makes total sense. I'm really sorry that I hadn't clued in to what doing mass together meant to you. It's not that I don't want to do the mass with you. It's that I didn't realize that doing mass with you was a way of me showing you that I loved you. I promise that that is important to me. That's actually why the first thing I did when I came home was tell you all the things that I was going to do around the house so you would know that that's a priority for me before my basketball game. To me, this is bridging the power dynamic gap. Not only is my partner understanding how to love me, but he is understanding that he needs to put in the work that women specifically put in on a day-to-day basis and rarely get in return. I think it's really easy to tell women to ask for what they want and put that responsibility onto them without even considering whether women even know what they want, whether women have been in situations where people have even given them an opportunity to ask for what they want, or whether they've asked for what they wanted in the past and have never received what they wanted. How about instead we encourage women to be in relationships where they feel safe enough to even have a conversation about what they want? How about we encourage women to be in relationships where their partners take on the responsibility to figure out what they want? Why do we believe that men are incapable of relationship building? Now, when I tell Elijah that I want to do something, he puts it in his calendar, and when he gets home from work, the first thing he does is ask me about the thing that we were going to do together. And I had to put in barely any time and energy to get him there. All I did was communicate through my tone that I was upset about something, and he figured out the rest. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen every single time. There are days when I do have to be more explicit about what I want, but I still give Elijah the chance to figure it out himself first. If there is a partnership where one person is able to deduce someone else's needs more than the other person is, there always needs to be a conversation about whether that's because of a power dynamic. And if it is, it's not the responsibility of the person who has less power to bridge that gap. Since we're on the conversation of power dynamics, I do want to take a moment to talk about finances in marriage, because that is one of the questions that came up from y'all. Elijah and I are very communicative when it comes to our finances. When we first moved in together, we would actually have monthly meetings to discuss finances. And over the years, that has changed to every 3 to 4 months, or when something comes up that we feel like we need to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is how we split finances in our household, because this is informed by power dynamics. We do not split our finances 50-50. Instead, we split our finances based on the income we're bringing into the household and also the financial commitments we have outside of our relationship. So, for example, there was a time when I was making more than Elijah, and so I was paying more of our bills. And now when I'm not working and Elijah's working, he is paying more of our bills. There have been moments when Elijah is financially supporting somebody or I'm financially supporting somebody outside of our partnership. And so when that happens, we do adjust our budget for a few months or a year depending on how much money we need to support this other person. Also, a side note about splitting finances. Personally, I think it's such a headache to sit at the end of the month and talk about what bills you paid and what bills I paid and divide it. Instead, I prefer just deciding up front what my partner's paying for and what I'm paying for, and then nobody has to pay anybody back. The other thing I want to talk about are savings and life insurance. My partner and I do have a few joint accounts, one for emergency expenses and one for long term expenses, and we both contribute to these accounts every month. Aside from joint accounts for Elijah and myself, we also have an account for the baby that we both contribute to, and we have our own personal savings account. So things that I want to do in my life that have nothing to do with Elijah, or things that Elijah wants to do in his life that have nothing to do with me. Life insurance. So I want to say two things about life insurance, and both of these things were recommended to me by my financial advisor. I will link their contact info in the description below. Just in case you're interested in getting a financial advisor, I would 100% recommend this person. They have completely changed my relationship to money. And I'm actually planning on doing another video in the future about finances. So I'll let you know more about the things they taught me there. But yes, life insurance. So the first thing is, yes, my partner and I have this intention to spend our lives together, but that's not always what happens. And often when a man and a woman are in a partnership together and they end their partnership, the woman suffers financially greater than the man does because of various reasons. So I do not have joint life insurance with my partner. I have separate life insurance. I have put him as one of the benefactors onto my life insurance, but I have the option to take him out at any time. Another reason I did not get joint insurance is because I want to be able to financially support a few people in my life if I ever do die. And I want to make sure that they are also benefactors on my life insurance in addition to my partner. I think that's everything for our chat today. Thank you so much for sticking with me through the end of this video. I hope you learned something. If you have any thoughts, please let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!